The warning beacons orbiting Kepler 9X glowed crimson against the darkness of space, casting eerie reflections on the research shuttle's viewports. Captain Herrera stood with arms crossed, watching as the planet's emerald surface grew closer through the main display. Kepler 9X, a death world so dangerous it had earned triple quarantine status after claiming the lives of 37 expedition members in less than a standard year. All sensors confirm we're the only vessel in a 2 million kilometer radius, pilot Toru Jensen reported, fingers dancing across the navigation controls. Emergency distress signal broadcasting on all Federation frequencies. Any response? Herrera asked, though she already knew the answer. Negative. Storm activity in the upper atmosphere is scrambling long-range communications. Engineer Raj Malhotra looked up from his workstation, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Captain, the primary engine coupling is deteriorating faster than projected. We have approximately 22 minutes before complete failure. Options, Herrera demanded. We can attempt an emergency landing on Kepler 9X to effect repairs, Raj said, his voice steady despite the implications of his words. Or we continue toward the nearest outpost and risk catastrophic engine failure in deep space. Captain Herrera's jaw tightened. Pilot Jensen, begin descent protocols. We'll set down in the clearing near abandoned landing zone Delta. It's the only site with detailed topographical data. Captain, Jensen protested. You know what's down there. The apex predator has decimated every expedition that's landed. Not even armed military units. I'm well aware of the risks, pilot. Herrera cut him off. Would you prefer we drift in space until our oxygen depletes? In the cramped storage compartment behind the shuttle's medical bay, 17-year-old Mara Lynn pressed her ear against the thin composite wall, listening intently to the crew's conversation. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she processed the implications. Kepler 9X, the death world, the apex predator. She had stowed away on this research shuttle 3 days ago, desperate to escape the stifling regulations of Central Station and gain first-hand xenobiological experience. The crew had yet to discover her presence, though she'd been careful to access ration packs only during sleep cycles and recycle all waste through the auxiliary processors. Mara's academic profile was flagged with both exceptional aptitude and disciplinary concerns at the Academy. Her unofficial research into apex predators across 17 colonized systems had earned her both academic probation and quiet praise from her xenobiology professors. But no theoretical study could compare to what waited on the surface below. The apex predator of Kepler 9X remained largely undocumented. The fragmented data suggested an enormous, six-limbed creature that could seemingly materialize from shadows, striking with lethal precision at anything that moved. Eyewitness accounts were scarce. Most observers didn't survive long enough to transmit detailed records. Mara's pulse quickened as the shuttle began its juddering descent. She braced herself against the storage compartment walls, mind racing through everything she knew about predatory behavior patterns. If they were truly going to land on Kepler 9X, her stowaway status would soon become the least of her concerns. Through the thin walls, she heard Raj's voice rise with alarm. Primary thruster coupling has failed. Secondary systems engaging, but stability is compromised. The shuttle lurched violently, throwing Mara against the compartment door. Pain shot through her shoulder as metal groaned and alarms blared throughout the vessel. She clutched her portable data tablet tighter against her chest, knowing it contained her most valuable possession, a comprehensive compilation of fragmented reports on the apex predator's behavior. "Brace for impact!" Captain Herrera's voice commanded over the intercom. The world dissolved into chaos as the shuttle plummeted the final 100 meters toward the surface of Kepler 9X. The impact came in waves. First, the jolt of emergency thrusters firing, then the screech of metal as the shuttle's underbelly scraped across rock and soil, and finally, the splintering crash as they collided with something solid. Mara was thrown against the ceiling of her hiding place, then slammed back down as the vessel came to rest at an awkward angle. For several moments, there was only the hiss of ruptured coolant lines and the erratic beeping of damaged systems. Then, gradually, voices filtered through the haze of pain and disorientation. "Jensen, status report," Herrera's voice, strained but commanding. I'm functional. Captain, minor lacerations to my left arm. Navigation is offline. External sensors at 30% capacity." "Raj?" A cough. Then, "Here, Captain. Engine coupling completely severed. We're dead in the water unless I can fabricate replacement components." "How long?" 3 days minimum, maybe 5. The gravity of their situation settled over Mara like a physical weight. 5 days on Kepler 9X. 5 days on a planet where most expeditions didn't survive 5 hours. She knew her moment of revelation had come. Remaining hidden was no longer an option, not when her specialized knowledge might contribute to their survival. With trembling fingers, she activated the release mechanism on the storage compartment door. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing the shuttle's tilted main cabin. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward her in stunned silence. Captain Herrera recovered first. "Who the hell are you?" Mara stepped forward, straightening her shoulders despite the throb of fresh bruises. "Mara Lin, xenobiology specialist, 3rd-year academy student." "A stowaway," Herrera's voice was ice. "On a restricted emergency mission." "Yes, Captain. I apologize for the deception, but I believe my expertise may prove valuable given our current location." Mara held up her data tablet. "I've compiled the most comprehensive existing research on the apex predator of Kepler 9X. Toru Jensen laughed bitterly. "Great. We have a teenager with a school project. That'll save us from the planet's deadliest creature." Raj Malhotra, however, studied Mara with calculated interest. "Let her speak, Captain. Knowledge is our scarcest resource right now." Captain Herrera's gaze remained hard, but she gave a curt nod. "You have 2 minutes to convince me not to lock you back in that compartment until rescue arrives." Mara activated her tablet, projecting a 3-dimensional composite image constructed from fragmented expedition reports. The hologram flickered to life. A massive creature with 6 powerful limbs, skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and a sensory array that suggested highly evolved hunting adaptations. The apex predator evolved as the dominant hunter on a planet with multiple competing predatory species, Mara explained, words flowing rapidly as she condensed years of research into her allotted time. Its hunting strategy is uniquely triggered by motion. Every documented attack began with prey movement. The faster the motion, the more aggressive the response. Jensen scoffed. "So we just stand still and we'll be fine? That's your brilliant insight." "Not exactly," Mara acknowledged. "But I believe understanding its behavioral triggers might give us survival options beyond the shoot-and-run strategies that have failed every previous expedition." Captain Herrera checked the chronometer on her wrist. "Your 2 minutes are up, and you've told us nothing that isn't in the standard planetary briefing." Mara took a deep breath. "Captain, with respect, the standard briefing is incomplete. My research suggests the apex predator possesses far greater intelligence than previously documented. The attack patterns show evidence of problem-solving and adaptive learning." A thunderous impact against the shuttle's hull cut her off mid-sentence. The entire vessel shuddered as something massive moved along its exterior. "Proximity alert!" Jensen called out, voice tight with fear. "Movement outside the shuttle. Large mass, circling." Through the cracked viewport, a shadow darker than the surrounding forest glided past. Smooth, fluid, and terrifyingly deliberate. "It's scanning us," Mara whispered, "learning our shape, our vulnerabilities." "Seal all hatches," Herrera ordered. "Raj, how quickly can you get emergency power to the defense grid?" "Hours, not minutes," the engineer replied grimly. The impact damaged the main power couplings. Another impact rocked the shuttle, harder this time. Metal groaned as claws or some equivalent appendage scraped along the hull. "It's testing for weaknesses," Mara said, eyes fixed on the viewport. "Each impact is precisely targeted at junction points in our hull structure." Captain Herrera's expression shifted subtly. "How would it know our structural weak points?" "Pattern recognition," Mara replied. "It's encountered human vessels before, learned from previous hunting experiences." A third impact, followed by an ominous silence that somehow felt more threatening than the attacks. "Captain," Raj called out. "The auxiliary communications array was damaged in the crash. Without it, we can't boost our distress signal beyond the atmospheric interference." "Can you repair it?" Herrera asked. Raj shook his head. "Not without replacement components. The signal amplifier is completely shattered." "There should be compatible equipment at the abandoned landing zone," Jensen suggested. "It's only a few kilometers from our position." Herrera nodded. "We'll send out the autonomous retrieval drones." "The drones will be destroyed," Mara interjected. "Anything that moves triggers the Predator's hunting response." "So what do you suggest?" Herrera's patience was clearly wearing thin. "We sit here and wait to die?" Mara's mind raced through possible solutions. "I can go. On foot. Slowly." "Absolutely not," Herrera replied instantly. "I'm not sending a civilian, much less an underage stowaway, into certain death." "Captain," Mara pressed, "the research suggests that careful, deliberate movement might not trigger the same aggressive response as rapid motion. And I have the xenobiological training to observe and adapt to the Predator's behavior." "It's suicide," Jensen muttered. "It's our best chance," Mara countered. "The drones move too quickly and predictably. They'll be destroyed before they reach the landing zone." Captain Herrera studied Mara's face, searching for any sign of uncertainty. "This isn't academic theory anymore. Ms. Lin, this is your life." "I understand, Captain. But it's all our lives at stake if we can't boost that distress signal." After a long moment, Herrera nodded. "Take emergency rations, a locator beacon, and a portable communication unit. The moment you sense danger, you find cover and contact us." "Yes, Captain." As Mara gathered the necessary supplies, Raj approached with a small device in his palm. "This is a micro camera. It'll transmit visual data back to the shuttle. We'll see what you see." "Thank you," Mara said, securing the device to her collar. "One more thing," Raj added quietly, pressing a small cylindrical object into her hand. "Personal defense weapon. Electrical discharge. Won't kill the Predator, but might buy you a few seconds." Mara slipped the weapon into her pocket with a nod of gratitude. Though privately, she doubted its effectiveness against a creature that had shrugged off military-grade weaponry. At the shuttle's emergency exit hatch, Captain Herrera delivered final instructions. "Move slowly. Stay in contact. Your primary objective is to locate a signal amplifier. Do not engage in unnecessary exploration or specimen collection." "Understood, Captain." The hatch slid open, revealing Kepler 9X in all its alien beauty and menace. Dense vegetation glowed with bioluminescence even in daylight, creating an eerie blue-green backdrop against the darker forest floor. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, sweet, pungent, and musky all at once. Mara took a deep breath and stepped onto the surface of the death world. The forest canopy of Kepler 9X filtered the amber sunlight into dappled patterns that shifted with the gentle breeze. Under different circumstances, Mara might have been captivated by the planet's beauty. The towering spiral-trunked trees with their luminescent fronds, the delicate floating spores that glimmered like suspended stars, the intricate symbiotic relationship between carnivorous vines and the small airborne creatures that pollinated them. But beauty was secondary to survival. Mara moved with deliberate caution, placing each foot with precise care to minimize sound and motion. The abandoned landing zone lay 2 kilometers northeast, according to her positioning device. A journey that would normally take 30 minutes now stretched before her as a multi-hour expedition. "Transmitting visual feed," she whispered into her communication unit. "Do you receive?" "Affirmative," Captain Herrera's voice replied through the earpiece. "Visual feed stable. Proceed with caution." Mara advanced slowly through the undergrowth, constantly scanning her surroundings for signs of danger. The week before summer solstice meant the forest was at its thickest, providing both cover and concealment for her and any predators. Half an hour into her journey, she noticed a subtle change in the forest ambience. The background chorus of small creatures, analogous to insects though biologically distinct, abruptly ceased. Stillness descended like a physical presence. Mara froze, every sense heightened. "Movement detected." Jensen's tense voice came through her earpiece. "Your 2 o'clock position, approximately 30 meters." Mara's eyes shifted carefully toward the indicated direction, careful not to move her head. At first, she saw nothing beyond the luminescent foliage and twisted tree trunks. Then a deeper shadow separated from the darkness between 2 massive trees. The apex predator. Even partially obscured by vegetation, its size was breathtaking, easily 4 meters at the shoulder, with a body that seemed to both absorb and distort light around it. Its 6 limbs moved with fluid precision, disturbing the undergrowth so minimally that even Mara's trained eye struggled to track its approach. "Don't move," Captain Herrera ordered through the comm. "Not a muscle." Mara didn't need the instruction. Her body had instinctively understood that motion meant death. She remained absolutely still, not even daring to blink as the creature circled closer. Now she could see it clearly, the sleek, shadow-black hide that seemed to shift texture with each movement, the sensory appendages that twitched and rotated independently to capture every environmental input. Its head housed no visible eyes, yet Mara felt with absolute certainty that it perceived her completely. "Steady," Raj whispered through the comm. Its movement pattern suggests investigative behavior rather than immediate attack posture. The apex predator paused 15 meters from Mara's position, its head swaying slightly as it processed her presence. Then, with deliberate grace, it moved closer. 10 meters. 5. 3. Mara could now feel the heat radiating from the creature's massive body, could smell its unique musk, earthy and metallic simultaneously. Her lungs burned with the need for deeper breath, but she controlled the urge, maintaining shallow, silent respiration. The predator extended a sensory appendage toward her face, stopping mere centimeters from her skin. The appendage pulsed, with what appeared to be a network of neural receptors, gathering data about this strange, motionless potential prey. For 30 excruciating seconds, neither human nor predator moved. Then, with a sound like rushing wind, the creature withdrew. It circled Mara once more, maintaining distance, before melting back into the forest shadows, as silently as it had appeared. Only when it had been gone for a full minute did Mara allow herself to exhale fully. "Holy shit!" Jensen's voice broke the silence. "You're alive." "It didn't attack," Mara whispered, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts to control it. "It was curious, not aggressive. Or it didn't recognize you as prey because you weren't moving," Herrera suggested. "Can you continue the mission?" Mara took a moment to steady herself. "Yes, Captain," resuming course to the landing zone. She continued her careful progress through the forest, now hyper-aware of the predator's presence, somewhere among the shadows. The encounter had confirmed her theory about motion triggering the hunting response. But it had also revealed something the fragmented reports hadn't captured. The creature's intelligence was far greater than previously documented. Its assessment had been methodical, almost scientific. After another hour of cautious movement, the dense forest began to thin, revealing the clearing where Landing Zone Delta had been established 3 years earlier. The abandoned research facility was smaller than Mara had expected. A prefabricated main structure surrounded by damaged equipment and the skeletal remains of 2 transport vehicles. "I've reached the landing zone," she reported, moving to locate the signal amplifier. "Be quick but careful," Herrera instructed. "Daylight cycles on Kepler 9X last only 9 hours. You have less than 3 remaining." Mara approached the main structure, noting the massive gashes in its exterior walls, unmistakable evidence of the apex predator's attacks. The facility's main door hung askew on damaged hinges, providing just enough space for her to slip inside. The interior was chaos: overturned furniture, shattered equipment, and dark stains that Mara recognized as dried human blood. Whatever had happened here had been violent and decisive. Communications equipment would likely be in the central control room, Raj suggested through the comm. Mara navigated carefully through the debris-strewn corridors, eventually locating a room filled with damaged consoles and transmission equipment. Most had been crushed beyond salvage, but in a sealed equipment locker, she discovered what she sought. "I've found an intact signal amplifier," she reported, carefully removing the device. "Appears fully functional." "Excellent work," Herrera responded. "Now, get back to the shuttle before darkness falls." Mara secured the amplifier in her pack and began the return journey, retracing her steps with the same deliberate caution. The forest had grown noticeably darker as Kepler 9X's sun descended toward the horizon, enhancing the bioluminescent glow of the native flora. She was halfway back to the shuttle when Jensen's urgent voice came through the comm. "Multiple heat signatures converging on your position. Not just the apex. There are smaller predators moving in your direction." Mara's pulse quickened. "How many?" "At least 5 distinct signatures. They're moving faster than the apex, approaching from the west." Seconds later, Mara heard them. A rustling advance through the undergrowth, accompanied by high-pitched vocalizations that raised the hair on her neck. Through the trees, she glimpsed sleek, low-slung forms, moving with predatory purpose. "Pack hunters," she realized aloud. "Secondary predators in the ecosystem." "Run!" Herrera commanded. But Mara made a split-second decision against her instincts. Instead of fleeing, she lowered herself to the ground and went completely still, pressing her body against the trunk of a massive tree. "What are you doing?" Jensen demanded. "They're almost on you!" "Running triggers the hunting response," Mara whispered. "Stillness might confuse them." The pack emerged from the undergrowth, wolf-sized creatures with triple-jointed limbs and elongated sensory organs where eyes would be on Earth canids. They moved with coordinated precision, clearly following her scent trail. The lead hunter paused 3 meters from Mara's position, its sensory stalks extended toward her. The others fanned out, circling with practiced efficiency. Mara's muscles screamed with the strain of maintaining absolute stillness as the creatures investigated her motionless form. One approached close enough that she felt its hot breath against her hand. Just as the tension became unbearable, a different sound cut through the forest. A low, resonant vibration that Mara felt in her chest more than heard with her ears. The pack hunters froze, sensory stalks rigid with alarm. The apex predator emerged from the deepening shadows, its massive form somehow more terrifying in the fading light. With a movement almost too swift to perceive, it seized the nearest pack hunter in powerful limbs and severed its spine with precision. The remaining hunters scattered, their retreat as coordinated as their attack had been. Within seconds, they had vanished into the forest, leaving Mara alone with the apex predator and its fresh kill. The creature made no move to consume its prey. Instead, it dropped the lifeless body and turned its attention to Mara, who remained frozen against the tree trunk. For several breathless moments, predator and human regarded each other in the gathering darkness. Then, with deliberate movements, the apex predator retreated into the shadows, leaving its kill untouched. It protected you. Raj's astonished voice came through the comm. Or at least, it prioritized eliminating the other predators over attacking you. The lack of motion confuses its hunting algorithms, Mara theorized, carefully rising to her feet. It doesn't register me as prey when I'm still... Whatever the reason, get moving, Herrera ordered. You have less than an hour of daylight left. Mara resumed her journey toward the shuttle, maintaining her slow, deliberate pace despite the growing darkness. The forest's bioluminescence provided enough light to navigate, but cast eerie shadows that seemed to move with lives of their own. She was within sight of the crashed shuttle when Jensen's alarmed voice came through the comm. "Movement behind you! Fast approach!" Before Mara could respond, something massive struck her from behind, sending her tumbling forward. The signal amplifier flew from her pack, landing several meters away in a patch of glowing vegetation. Mara rolled onto her back, gasping for breath, to find herself face to face with the apex predator. Its massive form loomed over her, sensory appendages fully extended. "Don't move," Herrera whispered urgently. "Remember your theory." Heart pounding. Mara forced her body to go completely still, despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The predator's head lowered until it was mere centimeters from her face, its sensory network pulsing with increased activity. Then, to Mara's astonishment, it extended a specialized limb toward the fallen signal amplifier. With surprising dexterity, it lifted the device and placed it deliberately beside Mara's motionless form. "It's returning the equipment," Raj breathed in disbelief. The predator maintained its position for several seconds longer, then backed away with the same fluid grace it had displayed during their first encounter. At the edge of the clearing, it paused, sensory appendages oriented toward Mara, before disappearing into the forest. Mara waited a full minute before slowly sitting up and retrieving the signal amplifier. "I'm proceeding to the shuttle," she whispered, her voice unsteady. Captain Herrera met her at the emergency hatch, expression taut with concern and disbelief. "What we just witnessed defies every report on the apex predator's behavior." "The reports were incomplete," Mara replied, handing over the signal amplifier. "The creature is far more intelligent than anyone realized." Inside the shuttle, Raj immediately set to work integrating the salvaged amplifier into their communications array. Jensen kept his distance from Mara, eyeing her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "You should have died out there," he said finally, 3 times over. "Yet here I am," Mara replied quietly. Captain Herrera studied the young stowaway with newfound respect. "Your theory about motion triggering the hunting response appears valid, but that doesn't explain why it returned the equipment to you." "I believe it's learning," Mara said, accessing her data tablet. "Adapting its understanding of us based on each interaction." "That level of intelligence would change everything we know about Kepler 9X, Herrera mused. "Signal amplifier integrated," Raj announced. "Boosting distress beacon now. With luck, we'll reach someone within 24 hours. Mara nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead to the implications of her encounters. If the apex predator possessed this level of intelligence and adaptability, the possibilities for interspecies communication were extraordinary. "We need to maintain absolute stillness whenever outside the shuttle," she advised the crew. "Any rapid movement could trigger the hunting response, regardless of the creature's curiosity about us." Captain Herrera nodded. "Agreed. Now get some rest. Ms. Lin, you've earned it." But as Mara settled into an emergency hammock in the shuttle's cramped crew quarters, sleep remained elusive. Her mind replayed each encounter with the apex predator, searching for patterns and meanings in its behavior. Something about their interactions suggested more than mere predatory assessment. The creature was studying her with as much intensity as she was studying it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they awaited rescue. But for now, in the relative safety of the damaged shuttle, Mara allowed herself to contemplate the remarkable being that ruled this death world, and the possibility that humans had fundamentally misunderstood its nature from the beginning. Dawn broke on Kepler 9X with a crimson intensity that transformed the forest into a sea of burning shadows. Mara stood at the shuttle's viewport, watching as nocturnal creatures retreated into burrows and daylight hunters emerged from concealment. Among them, she knew, was the apex predator. "Signal is broadcasting clearly," Raj reported, looking up from his console. "But the atmospheric interference is still limiting our range. It could be days before anyone receives it." "Our supplies won't last days," Jensen pointed out. "We have rations for 48 hours, maximum." Captain Herrera turned to Mara. "Your expertise has proven valuable. What do you suggest for water and food acquisition?" Mara hesitated, weighing their limited options. "The local plant life is largely toxic to human physiology, according to previous expeditions. But there's a stream approximately 300 meters east of our position. Water filtration should make it safe for consumption." "And food?" Herrera pressed. "There are several indigenous fruits documented as non-toxic, though not particularly nutritious for humans. They're identifiable by their phosphorescent blue coloration." Jensen shook his head. "So, our options are slow starvation or risking an encounter with the apex predator every time we need water." "I'll go," Mara volunteered. "I have already established a pattern with the creature." "Pattern?" Jensen scoffed. "You mean it hasn't eaten you yet?" "It's had multiple opportunities to attack and hasn't," Mara pointed out. "That suggests something significant about its behavior." Captain Herrera considered this briefly before nodding. "Take water containers and filtration equipment. Maintain constant communication." Mara gathered the necessary supplies and prepared to venture out once more onto the deadly planet's surface. As she approached the hatch, Raj handed her a small device. "I've modified your comm unit to include a biometric monitor," he explained. "It'll transmit your vital signs back to the shuttle. If you're in distress, we'll know immediately." "Thank you," Mara said, touched by the engineer's concern. Outside, the forest pulsed with renewed activity as diurnal species emerged for feeding and territorial displays. Mara moved with the same deliberate caution she had employed the previous day, heading east toward the water source. The stream, when she reached it, was more impressive than she had anticipated. A clear, fast-flowing current that carved a path through crystalline rock formations. Numerous small creatures, analogous to amphibians, darted beneath the surface or clung to exposed stones. "I've reached the water source," she reported into her comm. "Beginning collection." Mara carefully filled the containers, then added the purification tablets that would neutralize any harmful microorganisms. As she worked, she maintained constant awareness of her surroundings, noting each sound and movement in the forest. She had secured the water containers in her pack and was preparing to search for edible fruits when she sensed a change in the environment. The same sudden silence that had preceded the apex predator's appearance the day before. "I believe it's nearby," she whispered into her comm. "Your heart rate is elevated," Raj responded. "Are you in danger?" "No immediate threat. I'm maintaining stillness." Mara slowly turned her head, scanning the forest for signs of the massive predator. At first, she saw nothing unusual among the luminescent vegetation and twisted tree trunks. Then, a shadow detached from the deeper darkness beneath a massive, overhanging rock formation. The apex predator emerged with fluid grace, its 6 limbs moving in perfect coordination as it approached the stream. It paused at the water's edge, sensory appendages extended toward the surface, in what appeared to be assessment behavior. "It's drinking," Mara narrated quietly, "or possibly analyzing the water's content." The creature spent several minutes at the stream before turning its attention to Mara. This time, instead of approaching directly, it circled to position itself between her and the shuttle. "It's blocking my return path," she reported, keeping her voice steady despite the surge of alarm. "Can you find an alternate route?" Herrera asked. "Not without making rapid movements. I need to stay still and see what it does." The predator advanced slowly, its massive form moving with surprising delicacy through the undergrowth. When it reached a position approximately 5 meters from Mara, it lowered its body to the forest floor in a posture that reminded her of a resting feline. "It appears to be waiting," she whispered. For nearly an hour, human and predator remained in their respective positions, Mara standing with deliberate stillness, the creature resting with alert patience. Occasionally, it would shift position slightly, but its sensory appendages remained oriented toward her constantly. "Your vital signs are stabilizing," Raj noted through the comm. "But you can't stand there indefinitely. Humans need movement, food, water." "I know," Mara replied softly. "I'm going to try something." With extreme caution, she lowered herself to a seated position on a nearby rock, maintaining eye contact, or what passed for it, with the predator. The creature's sensory appendages twitched in response to her movement, but it made no aggressive advance. "It's tolerating slow, deliberate movement," she reported. "I'm going to reach for the water container." "Be careful," Herrera cautioned. Mara slowly extended her hand toward her pack, maintaining the same deliberate pace. The predator rose slightly, its posture shifting toward alertness, but still made no aggressive move. She successfully retrieved a water container and took a careful sip. The predator's sensory appendages extended further, clearly registering the activity with interest. "I believe it's studying my behavior," Mara theorized. "Learning my patterns just as I'm learning its—" "Fascinating hypothesis," Raj responded. "But that level of interspecies curiosity would be unprecedented in a pure predator." "Maybe it's not a pure predator," Mara suggested. "Or at least, not in the way we've categorized it." As if to underscore her point, the apex predator rose and moved toward a nearby tree, laden with the phosphorescent blue fruits Mara had mentioned earlier. With surprising dexterity, it used specialized limbs to pluck several fruits, then returned to its previous position. "It's gathering the edible fruits," Mara whispered in amazement. "Almost as if—" Her sentence remained unfinished as the predator did something entirely unexpected. It placed the gathered fruits on the ground between them, then backed away several steps. "Is it offering you food?" Jensen's incredulous voice came through the comm. "That's exactly what it appears to be doing," Mara confirmed, struggling to keep the excitement from her voice. "This isn't predatory behavior. It's social." "Careful," Herrera warned. "It could be a trap." But Mara's instincts told her otherwise. With slow, deliberate movements, she approached the small pile of fruits, knelt, and selected one. The predator remained motionless, its sensory appendages pulsing with increased activity. Mara lifted the fruit to her mouth and took a small bite. The flesh was tart and fibrous, but definitely edible. She nodded toward the creature and said in a soft, clear voice, "Thank you." The predator's response was subtle, a slight relaxation of its posture, a reconfiguration of its sensory array. But to Mara's trained eye, the change was significant. "I believe we've just established rudimentary communication," she reported. "Not language, but mutual recognition of intentional behavior." "This is unprecedented," Raj murmured. "No expedition has ever reported anything resembling social behavior from the apex predator." "Because they were all running and shooting," Mara pointed out. "Motion triggers its hunting response. Stillness allows for different types of interaction." She gathered the remaining fruits into her pack, maintaining the same careful movements. The predator watched but made no move to stop her. When she had finished, she slowly stood and indicated her intention to return to the shuttle with a gesture toward the crashed vessel. To her astonishment, the predator moved aside, clearing her path. "I'm returning to the shuttle," she informed the crew. The predator is allowing my departure. Proceed with extreme caution, Herrera instructed. This could still be part of a hunting strategy. But Mara's journey back to the shuttle was uneventful. The predator followed at a distance, maintaining visual contact without approaching too closely. When she reached the clearing where the shuttle had crashed, it retreated to the forest edge and watched as she entered the vessel. Inside, the crew gathered around as Mara distributed the water and fruits. "I've never seen anything like it," Jensen admitted, examining one of the blue fruits. "A predator offering food to potential prey? I don't think it sees us as prey anymore," Mara explained. "At least, not when we move slowly and deliberately. It's recognizing us as something different, perhaps as potential social partners." Captain Herrera remained skeptical. One cooperative interaction doesn't negate decades of documented predatory behavior. This creature has killed dozens of expedition members, all of whom were moving rapidly, making loud noises, and often shooting at it, Mara pointed out. "We've misunderstood its behavioral triggers from the beginning." Raj, who had been analyzing the water samples, looked up from his portable scanner. "The water is safe after filtration, and these fruits, while not calorically dense, contain several nutrients beneficial to humans. So we won't starve immediately," Herrera concluded. "But that doesn't solve our primary problem. We need engine repairs to leave this planet, and the parts required aren't available at the abandoned landing zone." "What about salvage from other crashed vessels?" Mara suggested. "Previous expeditions must have left wreckage scattered across this region." Raj considered this. "If we could locate a shuttle with the same engine configuration, I might be able to adapt components for our needs." "The nearest documented crash site is over 5 kilometers away," Jensen said, checking the navigational database. "That's too far to travel safely on foot." "Unless we establish a reliable, non-threatening relationship with the apex predator," Mara countered. Captain Herrera's expression hardened. "You're suggesting we try to befriend the deadliest creature on a death world classified as triple quarantine?" "I'm suggesting we attempt to understand it," Mara clarified. "If it continues to respond non-aggressively to our careful movements and reciprocal behaviors, we might navigate this planet more safely than any previous expedition." After a long moment of consideration, Herrera nodded. "Continue your observations. Ms. Lin, document everything, but do not take unnecessary risks. Our priority remains repair and evacuation." Over the next 2 days, Mara established a routine that allowed for both survival and scientific observation. Each morning, she ventured to the stream for water collection, moving with the same deliberate caution that had proven effective. The apex predator invariably appeared during these excursions, maintaining a consistent distance while observing her activities. On the 3rd morning, the creature approached closer than before, carrying not only the blue fruits, but also a different type of vegetation, a root system with bulbous growths that, when tested by Raj, proved to contain complex carbohydrates, digestible by humans. "It's expanding its offerings," Mara noted with excitement, "adapting to our nutritional needs based on observing which foods we consume more readily." Jensen, who had gradually shifted from skepticism to cautious acceptance, shook his head in amazement. If the Federation knew we were establishing a food exchange program with the apex predator of Kepler 9X, they'd think we'd all gone insane. Or they'd recognize that we've made a breakthrough in interspecies communication, Mara countered. By the 4th day, their patterns had evolved further. Mara would exit the shuttle, moving slowly to her regular observation point near a fallen tree. The predator would emerge from the forest, deposit gathered foods, then retreat to a respectful distance. After Mara collected the offerings, she would leave behind small items from the shuttle's supplies, packets of purified water, synthetic fabric scraps, or small light sources. The predator showed particular interest in the light sources, manipulating them with specialized appendages to study their function. Its behavior reinforced Mara's growing conviction that they were dealing with a highly intelligent species, rather than a simple apex hunter. "Look at how it tests the illumination from different angles," she pointed out, as they watched through the shuttle's viewport. "That's analytical behavior, not instinctive." "I'm more concerned with our dwindling supplies," Captain Herrera interjected. "The distress signal has been broadcasting for 4 days with no response. We need a more proactive solution." Raj looked up from the engine components he'd been attempting to repair. "I've managed to partially restore power to the secondary systems, but the primary engine coupling is beyond repair without replacement parts. We need to reach that crash site," Jensen concluded. 5 kilometers through predator-infested forest. All eyes turned to Mara. "Do you believe your relationship with the apex predator is stable enough to risk that journey?" Herrera asked. Mara considered carefully before responding. "I believe so, but with conditions. We must move extremely slowly, maintain visual contact with each other, and carry no weapons. Any rapid movement or perceived threat could trigger the hunting response." "No weapons on a death world?" Jensen sounded incredulous. "That's suicide." "Weapons haven't protected previous expeditions," Mara reminded him. "Our stillness protocol has kept us alive for 4 days already, longer than any group that attempted to fight the predator." After lengthy debate, a compromise was reached. The expedition would consist of Raj, to identify salvageable engine components, and Mara, to navigate predator interactions. They would carry minimal supplies, move at a pace that might extend the journey to a full day, and maintain constant communication with the shuttle. They departed at first light on the 5th day, following a route mapped from previous expedition data. The forest seemed more alive than ever, vibrant with bioluminescent displays and the calls of various species establishing territory in the morning light. "No sign of the apex yet," Mara reported after their first hour of careful progress. "But I suspect it's tracking us." "Confirmed." Captain Herrera's voice came through the comm. "Thermal imaging shows a large heat signature paralleling your route, approximately 50 meters to the north. Raj checked the portable scanner that would help identify the crash site. We're maintaining course. Estimated arrival in 6 hours at current pace." Their progress was slow, but steady, each step placed with deliberate care to minimize noise and sudden movement. Twice they paused as smaller predators crossed their path. Once, a pair of the wolf-like pack hunters, and later, a hovering creature that resembled a manta ray with prehensile tendrils. "The ecosystem diversity is remarkable," Mara noted, recording observations on her data tablet. "Multiple predatory niches filled by specialized hunters, all of which would happily eat us," Raj reminded her, though his voice held a hint of the same scientific fascination. By midday, they had covered just over half the distance to the crash site. The forest had grown denser, the canopy blocking much of the sunlight and enhancing the bioluminescent glow of the native flora. "The apex is moving closer," Herrera warned through the comm. "Now 20 meters from your position and closing." Mara and Raj halted, maintaining their practiced stillness as the massive predator emerged from the shadows ahead. It approached with the same fluid grace Mara had observed previously. But something about its posture suggested increased urgency. "Something's different," she whispered to Raj. "It's more alert, sensory appendages fully extended." The predator circled them once, then moved deliberately to block their forward path. When they attempted to adjust their route, it shifted to intercept. "It doesn't want us to proceed in this direction," Mara realized. "Or it's herding us into an ambush," Raj suggested, tension evident in his voice. Mara shook her head. "I don't think so. Its behavior has been consistently non-aggressive when we maintain the stillness protocol." She made a decision and slowly sank to a seated position on the forest floor, signaling Raj to do the same. The predator watched, sensory appendages pulsing with increased activity. "We're halting progress temporarily," Mara reported to the shuttle. "Something ahead is concerning the apex." For nearly 30 minutes, they remained seated while the predator maintained its blocking position. Then, abruptly, it moved away from them, advanced several meters along their intended path, and stopped to look back at them. "I think it wants us to follow," Mara said, slowly rising to her feet. "Follow a predator into unknown territory?" Raj sounded understandably skeptical. "It's demonstrated protective behavior before," Mara reminded him. "Remember the pack hunters?" With cautious steps, they followed the predator as it led them on a circuitous route that deviated significantly from their planned course. After 20 minutes of this altered journey, they understood why. Their original path would have taken them directly through a vast area of what appeared to be carnivorous vegetation. Massive, pitcher-like plants, large enough to engulf a human, with digestive fluid visibly sloshing inside their transparent outer membranes. Biomapping didn't show these, Raj noted with a shudder. They must have proliferated recently. The predator saved us from walking straight into them, Mara pointed out. The detour added over an hour to their journey. But eventually, they detected the metallic signature of the crash site on their scanner. The wreckage was more substantial than anticipated. A research vessel nearly twice the size of their shuttle. Its hull split open like a cracked egg against a rock formation. "Beginning component assessment," Raj reported as they carefully approached the wreckage. "If they used standard Federation engine configurations, we might find compatible couplings." The apex predator remained at the forest edge, watching as they explored the crash site. Its behavior had shifted again, more alert, sensory appendages constantly scanning the surrounding forest, rather than focusing solely on the humans. "It's acting as a sentry," Mara realized, "watching for other predators while we're vulnerable during the salvage operation." Inside the wrecked vessel, Raj quickly located the engine compartment. "Jackpot," he announced. "Primary coupling is damaged, but the secondary system is intact. With modifications, it should work with our shuttle's propulsion matrix." As he worked to extract the necessary components, Mara continued her observations of the predator. Its protective behavior reinforced her growing theory that the creature possessed far greater intelligence and social capacity than anyone had previously documented. The return journey proved even more remarkable. The predator actively cleared their path, driving away smaller hunters and indicating safe passages through potentially dangerous terrain. When a sudden storm arose, unleashing sheets of acidic rain that sizzled against exposed metal and stone, the creature led them to a sheltered overhang where they waited out the downpour. "It understands that we're vulnerable to environmental hazards," Mara noted in her recording. "And it's actively working to mitigate those risks." By the time they returned to the shuttle, Raj carrying the salvaged engine components, and Mara documenting every interaction with the predator. Even Captain Herrera had to acknowledge the extraordinary nature of their experience. "In 20 years of deep space exploration, I've never witnessed anything like this," she admitted as they shared their recordings with Jensen. "This creature defies all previous classification." "It's not just a predator," Mara insisted. "It's a sentinel species, intelligent, adaptable, and potentially social under the right conditions." As Raj began the complex process of integrating the salvaged components into their shuttle's damaged engines, Mara compiled her observations into a comprehensive report. The implications of her findings extended far beyond their immediate survival situation. If confirmed, they would transform humanity's understanding of extraterrestrial intelligence and necessitate a complete re-evaluation of Kepler 9x's classification. Night fell as Raj continued his repairs, the forest beyond the viewport coming alive with nocturnal bioluminescence. Mara stood watching the ethereal display, her mind racing with questions about the remarkable creature that had so defied their expectations. A shadow moved at the forest edge, the now familiar form of the apex predator emerging into the clearing. It carried something in its specialized manipulation limbs, an object that caught the light with unnatural reflection. "It's back!" Mara called to the others. And it's brought something. The Predator approached the shuttle with deliberate steps, then placed its offering on the ground before the main viewport. A polished stone shard that gleamed with an inner luminescence, unlike anything they had seen on the planet's surface. "What is that?" Jensen wondered, peering through the viewport. Mara activated the external scanner. "Mineral composition unlike anything in our database. It appears to be a naturally formed crystal with unusual phosphorescent properties." "A gift?" Herrera suggested, her skepticism finally giving way to wonder. "Or a token of communication," Mara suggested. "Something to represent itself when it's not physically present." The Predator remained by the offering for several minutes, sensory appendages oriented toward the shuttle as if waiting for a response. Mara made a decision and moved toward the emergency hatch. "What are you doing?" Jensen demanded. "Responding appropriately," Mara replied, selecting a small instrument from the scientific equipment locker, a spectral analyzer with a crystalline housing that refracted light in patterns similar to the Predator's offering. With careful movements, she opened the hatch and stepped onto the planet's surface. The Predator remained motionless as she slowly approached, placed her offering beside its crystal, and stepped back. For a long moment, human and Predator regarded each other in the bioluminescent glow of the forest night. Then, with a subtle shift of its massive form, the creature extended a sensory appendage toward the analyzer, touching it briefly before retreating back to the forest edge. "I believe we've just established formal communication protocols," Mara reported, her voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. "It understands the concept of symbolic exchange." As she retrieved both objects and returned to the shuttle, her mind was already racing with the implications. This wasn't merely a predator-prey relationship, nor even a simple mutual assistance pact. They had stumbled upon something far more profound, the foundation of interspecies communication with a being of remarkable intelligence. Inside the shuttle, Raj looked up from his work with an expression of cautious optimism. "Engine integration is proceeding faster than expected. We should have propulsion capability within 12 hours. "And the distress signal?" Herrera asked. "Still broadcasting. No response yet." Mara placed the Predator's crystal carefully on the navigation console. "When rescue arrives, what will you report about our experiences here?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Federation protocols for triple quarantine worlds were absolute. No interaction with indigenous life forms. Immediate sterilization of all contact sites. Comprehensive debriefing and potential memory adjustment for exposed personnel. "The truth," Captain Herrera said finally, "that we survived because we discovered something previous expeditions missed. The intelligence and social capacity of the planet's apex species." Jensen shook his head. "They'll never believe it. Or worse, they'll believe it and still classify this world for resource extraction." "Not if we provide compelling evidence," Mara countered, indicating her comprehensive data recordings. "This could change everything we think we know about extraterrestrial intelligence." The discussion continued late into the night as Raj worked on the engines, and the rest of the crew debated the ethical implications of their discovery. By dawn, exhaustion had claimed them all, except Mara, who remained at the viewport, watching as the apex predator returned to its position at the forest edge. "We're not so different, are we?" she whispered, though the creature couldn't possibly hear through the shuttle's hull. "Both trying to understand something outside our experience." The crystal on the console caught the first rays of Kepler 9x's sun, scattering light in complex patterns across the shuttle's interior. Mara studied the refraction, wondering if it held meaning beyond simple aesthetics, if the predator had chosen this specific crystal for the patterns it created. Her contemplation was interrupted by an urgent beeping from the communications console. Jensen, roused from sleep by the alert, moved quickly to investigate. "We're receiving a response to our distress signal," he announced. "Federation rescue vessel, ETA 14 hours. Captain Herrera, instantly alert despite her fatigue, joined him at the console. Send confirmation and status report. Minimal details, standard protocol. As preparations for evacuation began, Mara felt a growing sense of responsibility toward the remarkable creature that had defied every expectation. The apex predator had shown them not only intelligence, but compassion, protecting them from dangers, providing sustenance, establishing communication. To leave without acknowledgement seemed unconscionable. "I need to say goodbye," she told Herrera as the captain supervised Raj's final engine adjustments. Properly. Herrera studied the young xenobiologist for a long moment before nodding. "Be careful. Whatever understanding you've established, it's still a predator on a death world." Mara gathered a few items from the shuttle's supplies. A small container of purified water, a data crystal containing basic information about human civilization, and a simple drawing she had created depicting their shuttle departing and returning to the stars. Outside, the forest pulsed with morning activity, though the clearing immediately surrounding the shuttle remained conspicuously empty of smaller life forms. The apex predator's territorial influence was evident, even in its absence. Mara moved to the center of the clearing and settled cross-legged on the ground, arranging her offerings before her. Then she waited, maintaining the stillness that had become second nature over their days on Kepler 9X. She didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, shadows shifted at the forest edge, and the massive form of the predator emerged into the clearing. It approached with the same deliberate grace that had first caught Mara's attention, stopping a respectful distance from her position. "We're leaving soon," Mara said softly, though she knew the creature couldn't understand her words. "Going back to the stars." She gestured upward, then pointed to the shuttle, and finally to her drawing of departure. The predator's sensory appendages extended, processing the information with evident interest. "Thank you for protecting us," she continued, placing her hand over her heart in a universal gesture of gratitude. "For showing us that you're so much more than what we thought." The predator moved closer, its massive form blocking the morning sun and casting Mara in shadow. With precise movements, it extended a specialized limb toward her offerings, examining each with careful attention. When it reached the data crystal, it paused, sensory network pulsing with increased activity. Then, to Mara's astonishment, it produced an object from a specialized carrying pouch she hadn't previously noticed in its anatomy. Another crystal, smaller than the first, but with similar luminescent properties. The predator placed this new offering beside Mara's data crystal, then backed away several steps in what she now recognized as a gesture of respect. "A final exchange," she whispered, carefully collecting the crystal. "A promise to remember." Inside the shuttle, preparations for departure accelerated as Raj completed the engine integration and Jensen established secure communications with the approaching rescue vessel. Captain Herrera oversaw the inventory of salvaged equipment and the securing of loose items for takeoff. When Mara returned, cradling the Predator's final gift, she found the crew engaged in intense discussion. "We have to report this," Herrera was saying. "Federation protocols require full disclosure of all interactions with indigenous life forms." "And what happens when they send military units to study this creature?" Jensen countered. "We all know how that ends." Raj, uncharacteristically assertive, sided with Jensen. "This discovery is too important to risk bureaucratic mishandling. We should secure proper scientific protocols before disclosure." Mara placed the Predator's crystal beside its earlier gift on the navigation console. "The decision isn't just about protocols. It's about respect for a sentient being that saved our lives." Captain Herrera's expression softened slightly. "What would you suggest, Ms. Lin? Violate Federation law? Risk our careers and possibly our freedom?" "No," Mara replied thoughtfully. "I suggest we report exactly what happened. An emergency landing with minimal contact with the planet's surface. a successful repair operation using salvaged components, and a routine departure once rescue coordinates were established. And the apex predator? Herrera pressed. Observed at a distance, but no significant interactions occurred, Mara said quietly. My data recordings will show only standard xenobiological observations, nothing that would trigger enhanced quarantine measures or military intervention. The ethical implications hung heavy in the shuttle's recycled air. Each crew member understood the professional risk they would be taking by omitting the full truth from their official report. After a long silence, Captain Herrera nodded slowly. Sometimes the right course isn't the one in the manual. If this creature is as intelligent as we believe, it deserves the chance to develop without interference, either positive or negative. So we say nothing about the food exchanges, the protective behavior, the communication attempts? Jensen clarified. Nothing in the official report, Herrera confirmed. Ms. Lin can preserve her data for appropriate scientific review when proper first contact protocols can be established. Mara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Thank you, Captain. The rescue vessel arrived precisely on schedule. A sleek Federation cruiser, equipped with advanced medical facilities and repair capabilities. Its crew, prepared for potential casualties and traumatized survivors, seemed almost disappointed by the calm, methodical transfer of personnel and equipment from the damaged shuttle. Remarkable condition for a week on a triple quarantine death world, the rescue commander commented as Herrera completed the formal handover. We were fortunate, the captain replied simply. Emergency protocols worked as designed. As the cruiser prepared for departure, Mara stood at the viewport, watching as Kepler 9X receded below them. In the clearing where their shuttle had crashed, a massive shadow emerged from the forest edge, the unmistakable form of the apex predator, tracking their ascent with extended sensory appendages. Goodbye, she whispered, pressing her palm against the viewport in a final gesture of connection. Beside her, on the navigation console, the two crystalline glyphs caught the starlight, refracting it in complex patterns that seemed almost like a language waiting to be deciphered. Mara carefully secured them in her personal effects, along with the data tablets containing her true observations. Someday, she promised herself, the full story would be told, when humanity was ready to understand that the most dangerous predator on Kepler 9X wasn't a mindless killing machine, but a sentient being with as much curiosity about humans as they had about it. Until then, the crystal would serve as her reminder of the remarkable truth, that stillness could reveal more than motion, that patience could unlock understanding where aggression failed, and that even on a world classified as certain death, connection was possible between the most unlikely of companions. The official report would read, Emergency landing. No significant incidents. But Mara knew, as did the crew who had witnessed it, that what had happened on Kepler 9X would change them forever, and perhaps, someday, change humanity's understanding of intelligence among the stars.